Hey everyone, welcome to Build Your SaaS. This is the behind-the-scenes story of building a web app in 2020. I'm John Buda, a software engineer.
And I'm Justin Jackson. I do product and marketing. Follow along as we continue to build Transistor.fm. From 2018, 2020, and beyond.
It's September somehow. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
Time is a funny thing.
We're going to keep this one light, even though you and I both have a little bit of existential dread about November.
Yeah. I don't know why. What's happening in November, Justin?
Yeah. So we're not going to talk about it, although I think people should be aware of it and should be thinking about it and making the right choice. But I wanted to, instead of recording a full episode today, I thought we would just play this interview I just did with Justin Vincent over at the Tech Zing podcast. This podcast has been going forever. It's kind of one of the original bootstrapper podcasters.
Nice.
This is episode 333 that I recorded with Justin. Long time. We're at 116. So we bow to him and his how long he's been going. But yeah, this was a fun one. We were kind of debating. He saw something I tweeted, and he messaged me in the Slack channel, and we started a little debate. And then he said, "Hey, we should talk about this on my podcast sometime." And I said, well, "Let's just do it right now." And we were able to kind of carry that energy from this debate right into the podcast, which I think people will enjoy. So let's play that right now.
Cool.
Ladies and gentlemen who listen to this TechZing show, I am very proud to present that I am having an interview with Justin Jackson, who I am a huge fan of. And this is an impromptu interview, and super exciting that this happened. Hey,
yeah.
Justin.
I love this this is actually my favorite kind of interview, where it happens when I don't have to schedule things. I really don't like scheduling things in my calendar.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
And so, like, one of the reasons I started a business is so that I wouldn't have to have anything in my calendar. Now, this is at odds with, I really like being on podcasts, and if you want to be on a podcast, usually you have to put something in your calendar. So yeah, it was fun that we were just chatting on Slack, and then we could just say, "Hey, well, what? We both have microphones.
Let's just do it.
We're both clearly on the internet right now."
Well, just to give the listeners a little bit of background, for me, you're a very fascinating character because you have been sort of slowly, and I wouldn't say not slowly, but just growing in what's the word? Presence.
There's so many words you could have put in there. Infamy.
Infamy, exactly. That's it was like 3 years ago, or even 4 years ago, that someone said to me, "Hey, because I put out stuff, I write stuff, I say stuff," and people started saying to me, Justin Jackson said that, he said that. And the first time was with the product founder fit stuff. I sort of was really thinking about that. And a couple of people pointed me to your product founder fit posts. And it's like, yeah, we think along similar lines.
Well, and that especially, I think there's some things that I've written that I think I've changed my mind on. Mm-hmm. But product founder fit, market founder fit, those two things, even more, I think, than product market fit. Product market fit still seems somewhat, I want to say, it seems somewhat hazy. But I think most folks will have a better sense of whether they are a good fit for a market than, trying to somehow discern if their product has product market fit. Product market fit, I think, just means, you're making money and the business is growing. Like, you feel good about the business. Hey, do you have product market fit? If you feel good about the business, then the answer is yes. If you feel bad about the business, the answer is no. But knowing if you're a good fit for, I had someone ask me if I would be a co-founder on a gambling product. And I just knew right away.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
This is going to be a bad fit for me. And then I think founder product fit is a little bit more loose, but is the product going to give you what you want out of life?
Exactly. It's connected with everything that you want to do, and that has a huge implication on whether you're even going to be bothered to do it.
Yeah.
To work on it in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Which is where giving advice on this kind of stuff, especially in tweets or in podcasts or really in any form, blog posts even, is tricky because there are layers that make up any success. And so, and in our culture, we really, the format that works is you almost have to give people one slice at a time. So it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to talk to you about the founder market fit slice. And so you tweet about that. And then invariably you get somebody in your replies that says, well, wait a second, what about, the importance of the market? It's like, well, yes, and there's the importance of the market. Well, what about your experience in a given industry? Yes, that's also important. Well, what about all of your privilege that you bring to the table? Yes, that also matters. All of these things add up. And I think people lately have been trying to, I still don't know what I feel about this. It'd be interesting to get your take, but people have started talking a lot more about luck, like how much of startup success is luck.
Okay. Yeah.
And I had I asked this on Twitter the other day, and some people were saying 150%. It's like, okay, well, some people were saying 100%, 60%, 50%. And it's very difficult to quantify any success in those terms. One, because success is not a fixed, place that you get to. It's like Transistor is doing very well. That's the podcast hosting platform that I run, but we're doing well now. But wait 5 years, and we may no longer be a quote unquote success. And so what brought us here? How much of that was luck? Well, certainly me being born in Canada helped a lot. And certainly John being born in the United States helped a lot. Certainly there's other characteristics, like probably being male helped, all those things. But my sense, and maybe I'm wrong, but my sense is most of the luck is kind of where you were born and when you were born. And after that, I think luck has less of an impact than we think. Now, the things that are set in motion by where you're born and, what time you're born certainly matter a lot. But after that, like 2 kids born in June 1980 in Alberta have, it seems relatively the same amounts of luck to me, but I don't know. What's your take on that piece?
Well, so I've just been writing this boot camp and really thinking this through. So I had originally had the Startup Academy, which had 100 lessons, and I was trying to distill that down into just 7 lessons. And a couple of things that Rob Walling and that you have said, I think, are very pivotal in this discussion. And it's about context. It's about stair stepping. It's about who you are. It's about where you've come from.
Mm-hmm,
So the luck, I think, if you want to call it luck, in your case, is that you've been on this journey right from when you first were interested in audio and recording and talking and things like that, and then you happened to wanting to start building a business online, and you happened to start blogging, and then Amy Hoy said, you kind of need to focus your blog. And then you started focusing your blog, and then you got better at building your audience. And then you started talking to your audience, and then you put stuff out there. And then you felt good in yourself about building businesses and confident. And then you thought, I'm looking for a bigger thing. I'm going to level up. I'm going to go for a SaaS app type thing. And so it's just this winding journey of serendipity, but it's everything builds on everything. And it's all that got you to where you are. So if you want to call that luck, that's...
Yeah. And I think it is important having this concept of luck. I'm just trying to figure out how, like, can you quantify luck? You're like, how much luck do I have? Like, what is the measure of luck? And what is the measure of how much I had and how much I had yesterday versus how much I have today versus, this is why I think unraveling success is challenging. And I think I'm particularly interested in it now because at this point of my life, I think that the market you choose determines the ceiling for your success.
Can I make a point?
Yeah.
That viewpoint, the problem that I've got with what you just said is it makes the assertion that you're just a product, that you're not a person, a founder with 50 years of life. So your ceiling is your current market because that's where you're at currently as a founder. But you're going to go on to another product, So it's a level up game. So you do really well in that market, and then you move to a different. If you look at Rob Walling right now, I mean, he's not really focusing on something like Drip. He's now focusing on something that's bigger for him.
Obviously, there's an interplay here, but I was just listening to the Zapier interview that you folks did.
Okay.
I can't remember when that was. And he had looked at doing a product similar to Gumroad. And his comment was that the market just didn't seem to have enough momentum in it for what he wanted to do. So he saw that as kind of like, oh, that'd be a nice lifestyle business, but he wanted something bigger. And the way to level up was not necessarily anything that changed in him. It was literally him just pivoting from one market, which was, the creative digital seller market, which was growing, but had not yet hit its kind of zeitgeist, or this API mixer idea, which from his vantage point there was more built up energy in that market. The same way that, the Colorado River at some points has way more energy flowing than a small little stream in the country somewhere. The potential energy of the river is what carries you. And it's certainly, your skill as a kayaker or whatever you're doing to ride the water matters, but it's even the best kayaker in the world can't really get going on a small little stream, right? And even the worst kayaker, depending on how rough the water is, but the worst kayaker in the world could probably get going pretty good on a river that has some good flow. And to me, that's the point, is it almost, in a way, and again, there's tension between these ideas because some of it does rely on how good the founder is. But on the other hand, you almost want to say yes, and maybe the founder does not matter as much as we think.
Okay, so you could be a founder, and you could be the guy who created the $1 million homepage, selling pixels, and you could be that lucky guy who did that. But also, you could be a entrepreneur who spends 10 years not quite, if you do go into a great market, like, are you actually going to do anything? Are you going to do the work? Like, so there's a big hurdle to get over. Just doing it.
Yes. Yeah. Just
getting in the kayak.
It's true. In some ways, all of us, especially in the bootstrapping community, because it's been so much more important for us to figure this out. Like you can be a venture-backed startup founder and succeed without ever creating a profitable profitable business.
Oh, yes, I know several.
Right? Like, as long,
who have raised hundreds and hundreds of millions.
Yeah, you could. I mean,
never made it down.
Look at Kevin Rose. What success did he really have? Like Dig was kind of a failure, but then through Dig he met Zuckerberg. He invested in Facebook. I'm guessing he's made most of his money off Facebook. And now he's an investor and a podcaster and other things. But he's been able to become very wealthy, very well known, have all sorts of status. But in terms of business, and some people would say he's a great entrepreneur. I like him. I'm a fan of him as a media personality.
Yeah.
But in terms of a business person, is that a successful business person? But with bootstrappers, we've had to figure this out right away. And so we're always trying to kind of go after this question of like, what is it? And I think it's important for us to ask it even, and I feel like we're circling closer and closer, which is the market. It's the market that is the magnet that creates most of the energy. Now, yeah, you have to put yourself in a place, like you have to be willing to drag that canoe to the riverbed, push it in, get in. It certainly helps if you've been canoeing your whole life. It certainly helps if you have good equipment. It certainly helps, like if you were born closer to the river, right? All of those things help. But if you drag that canoe to a tiny little stream and you say, well, now I've found a stream and this one's just going to have to do. Like any stream will do. I'm just going to jump in here. And that's what I worry about is I feel like, especially in my past, I found some ideas and I thought, oh, here's a little bit of water. This is it. I'm in. And it wasn't until because I launched so many things and I worked for multiple SaaS companies, I was able to get a feel for like, what does momentum in a market feel like? You know, I worked for a project management software company, and it was just like, man, this market is slow. It's like a river full of cement. You know, it's just like the incumbents suck up all of the oxygen out of the room, and it's very, very difficult to get moving here. And then I had, I released a book called Marketing for Developers, and that just moved way faster. I was like, whoa, this is interesting. But then I met Adam Wathan. He reads Marketing for Developers and reaches out to me and says, hey, I'm about to launch my own book. I'm wondering if you can help me. And I gave him some advice. And then in his first month, he did more revenue than I'd done all year.
He's done so well. People love his stuff.
Yes. Now, is it? We have to try to reverse engineer it.
Right. That's my big point.
My sense is that certainly Adam has some skill. Certainly Taylor Otwell has some skill. But what they really happened upon is a great market, a hungry market, a market with pent-up demand. Taylor Otwell created Laravel, which is the most popular programming framework on the planet, as far as I can tell. And it's for PHP developers. And you think, well, why would that work? Well, there might be 125 million PHP developers in the world. And they've been ignored for years. They work on all sorts of legacy applications for big businesses like banks and, lean search agencies and insurance companies. And they want their lives to be better. And they were always treated as kind of the illegitimate bastard son. Rails got all the attention and all the cool stuff and all the cool conferences. And so Taylor comes along and releases this framework for PHP developers. And lo and behold, it starts to get a lot of traction. He releases his first SaaS app, Laravel Forge, at a conference, his own Laracon conference, and he gets 1,000 customers in a month. And he's done $10 million worth worth of revenue since he launched Forge. That's unbelievable. As really a 2 or 3 person team. Now, again, I think Taylor's quite impressive, but he's, by his own admission, he's not a very good programmer. By his own admission, he doesn't care at all about marketing, or, like, he doesn't know any of the tricks. He doesn't really pay attention, doesn't look at analytics. So what's the difference? And to me, it's like 125 million developers. Like, let's just say that even on average, they're each getting paid $25,000 a year in salary around the world. Like, that's billions of dollars being spent on PHP just on salaries, not including tools or education or, servers or anything like that. It's just a massive market. And in comparison, maybe Taylor's revenue looks small, $10 million. Wow, you could that's billions and billions of dollars in that market, and you're only getting 10 million. But for a bootstrap company, it's quite successful. And so that's what woke me up to this idea that the market determines most of your growth. And then I just saw other people echoing that back to me, like Sahil from Gumroad. Like I was just listening to Indie Hackers, and the guy that's created CodePad. The last 10 seconds of that interview is just him saying, "It's the market you target."
Just to give listeners a little bit of context of why we're talking about this, the reason why we're even talking in the first place is because of a post that Justin put on Twitter, just saying that audience. There's this theory that you grow an audience and then you talk to your audience and then you find out what they want. Mm-hmm. And Justin's sort of saying that isn't really the be all and end all of it. And so I wouldn't say we're disagreeing. We're just having a discussion about it. But yeah, that's what this is about.
Yeah, I think it was a good theory, because it can be true, especially with info products and communities and books and paid newsletters. In those situations, your audience, the audience that you build, matters a lot, right? Like Seth Godin has an audience. And so, he builds the audience through a lifetime of work, through blogging every day. And whenever he releases something new, there's an audience there that wants to hear it. Derek Sivers just released those books and made 250 grand or something. And it's like, okay, well, that makes sense because Sivers has an audience, But I think with especially software and especially SaaS and especially bootstrap SaaS, it is not necessarily needed to build an audience first. Like Ruben Gamez has built a really successful SaaS business and doesn't care about building an audience at all. He would prefer to be anonymous on the internet.
Just need to put just a slight, just different viewpoint on that. So audience in my mind is essentially traffic. So an audience is getting people to your site. So Ruben Gamez, there's really three main ways you can build traffic. One's through SEO, one's through PPC, you can pay for it, and another one is through content marketing. So Ruben has been very, very good at one of those methods. And I think it's very difficult to be successful without understanding at least one. You've got to start somewhere, right? So I've had a lot of conversations with him about it, but he capitalized on SEO so well. And that is essentially why he just doubled down on that. Triple down, 10x down.
But you can be really good at SEO and still not have a successful software product. He happened on a good channel, on a market with a good channel. Like every market has characteristics. So, the podcasting market has its own distribution channels that work really well. The digital signature market has its own channels that work really well and its own characteristics. And this is why I keep using, I know I like using metaphors, but the idea of surfing, of paddling out and waiting for a good wave and being able to recognize the shape of a good wave and then choose it strategically, paddle out and try to ride it is, to me, feels way more like business than anything else. Whereas the build your own audience approach is almost like you're trying to build an artificial wave. You know, you're trying to create your own velocity, whereas the surfer is tapping into an energy, a wave that already exists, momentum that already exists. And I know that the semantics of this, like Arvid Kahl was saying this too, we're getting into the territory where terms like audience, market, and problem are being defined in often diverging ways. And I said, you know, to me, in our context, at least the way I see it used, is audience largely means a group of people who have assembled to follow someone on Twitter, a blog, a podcast, a newsletter. Its key characteristic is that it's attached to a person. Like, I'm in Jerry Seinfeld's audience. And if you look up the dictionary definition, that tracks, I think, best with that definition. You have an audience, you have followers, you have people that are going to show up for your show. But a market is different. You know, the diamond market in the world is $3 billion. That's a market, right? It has its own momentum and its own, like, people today woke up and went to jewelry stores or jewelry websites all around the world and bought probably, I don't know, 20, 30, $40 million worth of diamonds. Like, that happened today, and tomorrow that'll happen again. And the next day that'll happen again. That's a market, and that's momentum in a market. And I think it feels like we should be, new entrepreneurs should be paying attention to, and you could learn this by building an audience, but what I'm trying to when I give advice now, I'm saying, learn how to paddle, like learn how to paddle out into water, learn the fundamentals of surfing, try out some smaller waves, learn to recognize what makes a good wave, and, you know, build all those fundamentals so when the right wave comes, then you can ride it.
Yeah.
But it's going to be the quality of the wave that's going to determine ultimately the ride you have. If you just take any wave that comes, you may be disappointed if the wave's too flat or too small or, you know, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, speaking to this idea of, like, you know, a lot of people building an audience, a market, an entrepreneur who I've been talking with recently, Michael Lynch, he built a site called Is It Keto? So it was a great SEO play. And, you know, I think he gets like 20,000 uniques a week to his Is It Keto search engine, people seeing is food keto or not. And he's found it super difficult to monetize that audience. So he's sort of had this wave, he's had this market, and you sort of can't deny that there is a market of keto, but it's been super difficult. But through having his blog and through growing his audience, because he also does retrospectives and he does a lot of stuff on Hacker News, he was ultimately able to do the traditional thing. Like, basically, he scratched his own itch and he did find a really interesting product to sell to his audience. So he's like a counter example, which is why I feel like this whole thing is quite nuanced. So he had a huge amount of traffic, couldn't work out how to monetize it, but also had another traffic that was his own sort of audience that he was growing. And what he built was a little USB thing that you plug into a computer, and it lets you control it. It lets you change the BIOS.
I don't think that's a counter example at all.
Yeah, okay.
I think he's sitting in the water, and all of a sudden this massive wave comes along, and he's like, "That looks great." He gets on it. Not all massive waves are great to ride. Some of them end right away. Some of them are just too steep. Some of them, you know, there's
I like that.
all sorts of characteristics of the wave. Yeah. So he tried to ride that first one. He said, not that one. I'm not going to try to ride that kind of wave again. And then but he learned. And maybe it's because he's sitting along with some other surfers. And, you know, Janet, the surfer, says, you know, I tried riding this kind of wave the other day, and it was great. And he picked up on some of that and then went out and tried to ride the next thing. We do find things in the midst of doing things. I think doing things is not a bad idea. The challenge is is that we have so much expectation wrapped up often in everything we try. I mean, I love running Transistor. It gives me all sorts of purpose. It gives me, but ultimately the thing I want is a good life. And so I set off on this journey, not necessarily to run a podcast hosting platform. I set off on this journey because I want to be able to wake up whenever I want to wake up. I want to be able to live where I want to live. I want to be able to take a whole day off and go mountain biking with my kids. And that dream, the pursuit of that dream means that, every wave that comes along, we're like, is this the one? Is this the one that's going to bring me to the promised land? And we can get so attached to it. We're so desperate for that good life that, something comes along and we're like, this is it, And I've had that experience multiple times. As a way of illustrating this, I'd been building this audience forever. And had pretty good success with this book called Marketing for Developers and this community called Mega Maker. And I'm like, okay, I got to launch something else. And it seemed like what people wanted was more marketing advice for me. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to create this thing called Tiny Marketing Wins. I launched it as a free thing initially. It was top of Product Hunt. And what I was observing was people saying, I would pay for this. And I said, well, let's test that out. And I did a launch, and it was the best launch I'd ever done in my life. I think I made like $36,000 in a day or something. Ultimately, that proved to be a false positive. These folks were people in my audience. They're fans. It's awesome having fans.
They wanted to buy from you.
They wanted to buy from me. They were just excited about buying from me. And I could not replicate it. I could not make it into any sort of flywheel that would be a sustainable business. And I tried. It was a subscription product, and people signed up for the annual plans. But when we got to the next year, I could just tell that this was not going to work. Like, people had signed up originally because they were excited about me and they're excited about being in the audience, but it didn't have legs. And so that was the hardest day of my life. Not the hardest day of my life, I shouldn't say that. It was a very hard day because I just knew when I woke up that day, all of these successful charges had gone through. I made another $36,000, and I'd made money all along the way, but this was the big renewal day. And I'm like, I just know I got to refund all this. Like, this business is just not going to work. And I went through on Stripe and refunded every single one. Just refund.
Wow, that's a lot. 36,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that. It was painful.
I've done that, but not 36,000 worth. But I've definitely gone through that experience and have backed out with a shitload of money, but nothing like that. That's a lot.
And I was just so, in retrospect, I was so desperate for it to succeed, partly because I'd invested a lot of time in it. And by this point, by the next year, I really needed that 36,000. Like, I was like, this is going to pay a lot of bills for me. And so I'm holding on to this idea that I'm trying to ride this wave that is clearly not going to work, but I'm trying to make it work, and I'm doing it expertly. I'm using all my marketing tricks, all the skills and relationships and network, everything that I've brought to Transistor. I'm doing all those same things on Tiny Marketing Wins. It's not working. And, some folks will say to me somewhat cynically, like, once you've built an audience, people get cynical and they'll say, well, it's easy for you. You've got a bunch of people on Twitter and a bunch of people on your email list and people know you. And the truth is that it does help, but unless the market is right, unless you've really hit on a category that is in demand and has demonstrated demand, It doesn't matter how good you are at anything. It doesn't matter how good of a programmer you are, how good of a marketer you are, how good of a business person you are, how good of a networker you are. It doesn't matter. And I've got a lot of split tests to show that that's true, in the sense that, I've applied the same amount of effort and skill and audience or to some products and seen how that affected it, and then applied it to others and seen how that was affected. And it's just, and everybody has this experience. Like Adam Wathan got super excited about making t-shirts for his podcast, Full Stack Radio. And so, he invests all this time and money developing these t-shirts. And it's just like, it just ended up being a big pain in the ass that didn't really. And that's Adam Wathan, the great Adam Wathan, that, everything he touches turns to gold. Well, that's not true. Tailwind, which is, the current project that's wildly popular, that grew out of a failed SaaS attempt, and none of us can even, we don't even remember the name of this failed SaaS product he released. So yes, Adam has lots of skill. He also has lots of connections. He also has, a disposition, I think, that helps him a lot. He's willing to ask for help. I think he messages people more than anybody I know. But it's the market. It's the market that gave him that swept him up. Was that
market his first product?
His first product, I think, was way back in the day, was plugins for like audio software.
Okay. So what I'm saying is, I think we're saying the same thing. I don't think we're disagreeing. I think if anything, we're really agreeing. But what I'm saying is, because I think maybe our communities are slightly different. The Nugget community, for whatever reason, I have attracted thousands of people who don't want to do, who are entrepreneurs. They're not doing something. They're not getting started. So what I'm saying is the very first thing that you need to do, even before picking a great market, is just start doing stuff and start practicing and get on the surfboard and just start surfing waves. And I personally don't care if you surf a good wave or a bad wave for the first year or the first couple of years, because you're kind of learning by surfing on waves. Now, once you've been surfing for a couple of years, yes, then I'm thinking it's really good. Now, you may be a super, super, smart person who can surf the best possible wave in that first month. But I worry that people will get so stressed about picking the right wave that they won't be learning the foundation. That's where I'm coming from here.
Yeah, no, I agree with that for sure. But I also don't want people to, there's some folks listening right now that are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And
like me.
They have industry experience, right? And industry experience, I had folks coming to me and say, hey, can you please teach me how to build an audience? I can just tell, I said, well, I can teach it to you. I can work with you on it, but it's a long slog. I've been doing it since 2008. And, by some measures, I'm not even that good at it. Like Steve Shoger, who's Adam's partner, he's been able to build a much larger audience than I have in a far shorter time. And it's just like anything else. Like, it helps if you have a fair amount of charisma. It helps if you're pretty good on media, like podcasts and videos and blogs. And there are some people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s that don't need to do that because they have enough experience. What they need to learn is the skill of observing the waves they've been watching their entire life. Mm-hmm. And they just need to be able to recognize opportunities. They haven't looked at things this way yet, but they could. And to me, that's the skill, is like being able to observe. And you will probably find it or notice it while you're in the midst of doing something else. So certainly you got to do something, keep working, keep going to the job, keep trying to meet new people, keep getting into interesting conversations. But I think to tell everybody they need to build an audience is probably not right, especially because for 40, 50, 60, 70-year-old folks, it just might be too much work. They're competing against, like in the PHP community, you're competing against Caleb Porzio, who's like super smart and has lots of time to create screencasts and, work on stuff. It's just going to be tough and I'm not saying it's impossible. And if you're a super charismatic 70-year-old, maybe you should do it. But for some folks, I think it's just going to be learning to observe the characteristics of a market. And as you're, doing your daily work, like I have a friend here in Vernon who is doing consulting work for ages in e-commerce. He's just building sites, going to work every day, building sites. And then eventually he notices that people want Shopify sites. So he starts building Shopify sites. And then after a while, he's like, people keep asking me to build this Instagram integration. And I keep doing it custom. Instagram is growing like crazy. Shopify is growing like crazy. Maybe I should just build a SaaS that does this. And he did it. And it's been a great SaaS business for him, So, and he has no audience. He's terrible at marketing. Like he's not good at it.
Yeah, the word audience is terrible in this discussion. I hate the word audience because I don't mean that. So we're even in this discussion, it's not really on parity because I'm not talking about what you mean by audience.
Yes.
I'm talking about people.
Yes, but even people, like there's this idea also of is like, okay, amass a group of people, like corral a group of people, or gain the interest of a group of people using a lead magnet or something. Then reach out to them and find out what they want, and then build it. And I mean, I've got blog posts where I talk about that. I think I've changed my mind on that because I think that's way more difficult to corral a group of people or entice a group of people with a lead magnet or whatever, and then send them a survey or even to do 100 customer phone calls. Very, very difficult, as opposed to just looking for demonstrated demand. And to me, demonstrated demand is every morning I wake up and I go down to this coffee shop here, Ratio, and there's a lineup out the door. I wake up the next day, there's a lineup up the door. There's demonstrated demand for expensive kind of hipster coffee in this town. And to the point, actually, where I think I could probably start another shop and there would still be enough demand that I could still do okay as well. In the same way that if you show up at the beach and somebody is selling ice cream and they've got a massive line, you could literally set up an ice cream stand right beside them, selling the exact same ice cream. And if there's enough demand, you will do great as well, right? It's looking for patterns of demonstrated demand.
Yeah.
And as opposed to like, at least in the way it was presented to me, which was, you build up a newsletter list and then you get to know these people. And then as you're getting to know these people, you eventually kind of figure out what they want through surveys or customer interviews or whatever. And then you build that. And it's just not enough. It's not a big enough movement. And I think there's also this idea, and people disagree with me. I could be wrong, but there's this idea of like Kevin Kelly's got this idea of 1,000 true fans. Seth Godin's got this idea of minimum viable audience. And I mean, there's nuance to what they're saying, but the way it's presented often in the commons is like, oh, I just need the smallest audience possible or the smallest market possible. Or, there's this famous Merlin Mann presentation at South by Southwest with John Gruber, where they're like, don't make a podcast about Star Wars. Make a podcast about that one Jawa in that one scene. And I think it's led people to believe that like these tiny little niche markets will give them, enough fuel in the tank to have a really good business. And I just haven't seen it because, and this could be confirmation bias, but my friends that are doing well are all in big, fast moving markets. Even like to make $1 million every year, they're carving out these tiny percentage points off these massive markets, or relatively big anyway.
Well, I mean, I 100% agree with that. I mean, there's like that is to me, that is just completely logical. And you wrote a fantastic blog post about it, and you quoted a TechZing podcast where I was speaking with the guys from Morroware, and and it was tough for them. I mean, it was super tough for them to build this tiny niche product. Yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, I got a lot of hate for that post because people thought I was like flogging Morroware, and that the point was not to take anything away from their success. They've built an incredible business by any measure. It's awesome. They employ all these people. They've got great lives. They can pay themselves great salaries, but they're on record on your show.
Yeah,
you say, "Would you do this again?"
And they're like, "No, I'd pick a bigger market."
And so I'm like, well, it's not to take anything away from their success, but if you had someone go down a certain path, and you met up with them later and said, "Hey, should I go down that path?" And they say, "Oh, no, take a different path." It's like, okay, well, just listen to them and take a different path, right?
There's so much freaking nuance to building businesses. This is the thing. Like, I don't know, when I meet a new person who comes into the Nugget community, I can almost tell within a split second, is something going to happen for them. It's just it's I hate to say it, but it is about the person. It's about the person. It's a whole the whole way everything comes together. It's the person, it's the market, it's how they do it, it's how they execute it. It really is alchemy. It truly is alchemy.
And yes, and it does matter. Like if you hear Taylor Otwell's story, it's like he's setting out on a journey to make a better life for him and his family. He's sitting in this tiny apartment with his wife. He got married super young. They have a brand new baby. They're in, this tiny apartment. He doesn't even own his own computer. He's doing some programming for a trucking company or something in Little Rock. And he sets out on this journey. I've got to make our lives better. And I think a lot of us can identify with that, right? A lot of us set off on this journey when we have kids. We want our lives to be better. And certainly that helps. You're working towards something. You're putting yourself on a collision course with luck, hopefully. You're at least getting out into the water. If you just stay home and play video games all day, like you said, you're probably not going to become a great surfer. To become a great surfer, you got to show up. You've got to be intimidated by all the other surfers. You've got to, buy a board and then find out that it's a bad board. You've got to take some lessons. You've got to wipe out a ton of times. Mm-hmm. And if you're willing to show up, I mean, this is why I like James Clear's stuff in Atomic Habits, because, when I got massively depressed in 2016, 17, and this line saved me, which is every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you want to become. And this idea that, even when I didn't feel like it, like when I didn't feel like I was a very good dad, it's like, okay, well, I could wake up and I could just do like one little vote, like make the kids waffles. It's like, okay, well, there's one vote. And the thing about taking action, is it reinforces this identity you want to have for yourself. So when I make waffles for my kids, all of a sudden I become the kind of dad who makes waffles for their kids, right? And it definitely, it helps every single day to go, okay, I'm going to do this. And it's the same for business. We're taking these little actions every day. So 2008, I switched careers into software. I'm 28 years old, already feeling like the oldest guy on my team, working from the ground level up at customer support. And I start this blog, like, here's Justin's blog. Here's a little vote for the kind of person I want to become. And, if I'd stopped there, I wouldn't be here right now. But the next day I posted another blog post, and it does build on itself. Yeah, I think we do agree here.
Exactly. That's my point. That's my point. I'm saying we 100% agree. I completely agree with you. But I'm just saying that my fear is, my worry is, a lot of people listen to you. You're very, very super respected. And so when you put something out like that, which is completely correct advice, it's correct advice for people who are like a level 3. They've gone through getting started. They've gone through the wave analogy. Like they've surfed a bunch of waves, and now they're ready for the right wave.
Yeah.
So, but the problem is if you tell people who are just starting out to look for the right wave, that's sort of like telling people to build a unicorn, because they're looking for the right wave and they're not really focusing on actually what they probably need to be doing, which is, how do I work with customers? How do I do draft? There's that basic stuff. Now, but I 100% agree with you. Does that make sense? We are kind of agreeing.
I think, and the way I presented it in this article, if you look justinjackson.ca/surfing, the beginning stage is gaining relevant skills, understanding the market, making connections, observing demand. And you might have to do that. That's like the fundamentals, right? What's interesting to me, though, especially, of my cohort, I'm the oldest. It took me the longest to find something that worked, and I'm the least successful. Now, I'm happy where I am. I'm super thankful every day. But what's interesting to me, especially when I'm giving advice to other people, is, what's the difference between Nathan Barry and me? Well, part of it is he got into the water earlier. He was a homeschooled kid. He graduated early. He started working for an agency, I think, when he was still in his teens. He's practicing some of these fundamentals early. And, the same goes with Adam Wathan and Taylor Otwell. And it's like, what did they do different? And some of it is luck. But because they were the ones that woke me up to this idea of, Justin, quit treading water with this tiny marketing wins garbage. Like, you're just treading water. There are way bigger waves. And they were just showing me, and it's like, we've all heard of the glass ceiling. The glass ceiling is this idea that you can see above you, like the potential that exists above you, but you can't get to it. But I was experiencing something different. I was experiencing the shrouded ceiling. I can't see the potential. I couldn't see the potential. I just thought that this little wave I was riding was it. Like, that was it for me. And they opened my eyes, partly because I could see their revenue numbers. And I was just like, what? Like, whoa, this is next level. So what's the difference between Adam Wathan and me? Now, again, that first part's important, but I think it could be easy for folks to get stuck in the same way that I was stuck in this one gear. I'm in first gear, and I just want them to understand that, in the same way that if you grew up in a small town like I did, like the richest people were farmers and lawyers and real estate agents. If that's all I ever knew, if I didn't know that, no, there's markets out there that are insane. And, now we've got, at least we have people being transparent about it. Like Adam Wathan, I think, has been pretty public about, how much money Tailwind UI's made. It's like, it's way more success. It's incredibly successful. And the lesson I'm trying to learn from that, and that I think I learned, was, wow, the market that I choose really matters. And so I can practice wherever I want. I need to gain these fundamental skills, but I got to make sure I don't get stuck there. I've got to make sure that I understand that there's a bigger world out there. And I think this is even more important when we talk about privilege and we talk about diversity and things like this, because, I'm a white male in Canada who happened to get to know some other white males in tech. And what I've been trying to do lately is share the story outside of my circle. I was on the phone with a fellow the other day, and I said to him, I talked to Adam and Ben Ornstein and, all these people that are kind of in my group. We talk all the time. Like, we're messaging each other every day. He's like, what? He's like, I just thought you were all doing that by yourselves. Like, you're just working by yourselves, like figuring all this out by like solopreneur. Like, that's what, and people can have these images the same way, I had these images of Rob Walling and Mike Tabor when I'm listening to Startups for the Rest of Us back in 2008 in my Honda Fit driving an hour to work. I had these pictures of this must be what they're doing. I'm creating this vision in my head that it was completely incorrect. And I think for people to have an understanding of let's blow the ceiling off this. Let's blow the glass ceiling off. Let's blow the shrouded ceiling off. Let's show them that there's an enormous potential, and it doesn't have to be, there's bigger markets than farming and real estate and law.
I want to say that's my favorite thing about your work, your blog posts and all the things that you've put out that I've seen, is you have been intentional. A lot of people leave a lot of things to miracle functions, to black boxes. They just sort of hope for the best in certain different ways. You've been intentional along every vector, so intentional on the product fit, intentional on the market fit. Now your intentionality is moved towards thinking about, okay, what market am I in? And I really like that. And I think that's a big problem that a lot of people have, is they rely on black boxes and miracle functions and just sort of hope for the best in these different areas. They don't dive deep.
The advantage for me is that everything came difficult and took a long time. And again, even then, with all the privilege of, I got my first computer in 1985. I've used computers consistently since 1985. I have so much privilege, but even for me to figure it out, it took all this time. And maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like I've seen a lot of the sides of this box. And, we do see this every once in a while. Someone gets lucky their first time dropping in on a wave, and they ride it and they go, wow, just got to do what I did. Mm-hmm. And I'm always like, okay, well, let's see how you do the next time around. Right. And we've also seen that, quote unquote, experienced founders who had a big success out of the gate and then went to launch startup number 2. And that they weren't able to replicate the magic. They didn't understand what gave them that success in the first place. And I'm not willing to give all of that up to luck. I think that the same way that a farmer can, even with the weather and everything else, good luck, bad luck, a farmer can get reasonably good yields every year because they've been doing it forever and they've got all sorts of skills and they know how to read the weather and they know how to, we need to be doing that with markets. And I think it's possible to at least give ourselves more surface area for luck to happen. And choosing the right market, I think, is the biggest part of that. But I think there's other things like practicing, gaining skills, building a network is massive. Like building a network, in all the interviews I've done, I'm surprised by how many people say, oh yeah, then I met this person and then they were like, oh, well, you should do it this way. And then I went back and did it that way. And it's often the people we know that create these next jumps for us to get to.
So is that one of the most important things? Like if you would say, so obviously we've heard the market advice, but if you were talking to someone who was just starting out, who was a entrepreneur, they weren't out the gate yet, what would you say?
I think I said at one point, be known for something, and which in some ways it's like that. Maybe I'm going back to the build your audience thing, but be known for something. Oh, I said make waves. That's what it was. Be known for something. Speak up. Share your thoughts. Run experiments and publish the results. Don't be obnoxious, but have the courage to challenge the status quo. Craft your own point of view. And this was, I think I tweeted that after somebody had asked me to look at their resume or something. And I was like looking at their resume and I'm just thinking,
just look like everything else.
Yeah. Like what would actually make you hire somebody? And we know like a huge percentage of hires end up being like who you know and who knows you. And a huge part of having this business serendipity is who you know and who knows you. Like today, I needed to figure out why Google is not indexing Transistor's podcast feeds. I couldn't figure it out. We have all of the old feeds are working, but customers sign up, create new podcasts, and for some reason, Google's not indexing them. And Google's got this black box where there's no way to submit a podcast. They just crawl it automatically. And so I asked on Twitter, I DM'd a bunch of people, and I'm getting no responses. And then I emailed a person and he's like, oh yeah. And he CC'd me, here's the person who's in charge of Google Podcast. You guys can meet each other. And awesome. I mean, part of that's tenacity, but part of that is who I know and who knows me. And that's a good way to solve problems in business. It's a good way to get ahead. So yeah, I think if I was giving advice, it helps to make connections. It helps to be known for something. It helps to, like Ruben Gamez, I don't think has a huge like Twitter following, but a lot of people know him. Mm. He's built up a reputation. Yeah. He's built up a reputation. If you're in SaaS and you want SEO advice, who do you go to? You go to Ruben. So that you want to be the kind of person that people go to when they need help or go to when they're starting something new and they look for a co-founder. And that does take time. That's like something that you cultivate over time. And again, with the farming analogy, I just said it's like, that's like fertilizer you put on the soil, and that kind of determines, what you can grow there. And so you just keep adding fertilizer to the soil. You just keep making, doing the best you can. And then hopefully you can grow something in that over time.
If I had imagined how this podcast was going to go, it would not be like this. Normally, normally we go through the history of someone.
This is way better.
This feels like part one of a 10-part series or something. But this is very, very interesting. Like I think people have got like a splash of water in the face from listening to this show. Like, this is Justin Jackson. This is who he is.
I'm glad that we had some sort of rapport before, because most of my shows that I make are like the first half is terrible. Almost consistently, the first half is terrible. And it was nice that we were literally having kind of like this hot conversation. And so like the mics were already hot. We just had to like turn them on and then jump into it. I think it's better. I'm trying to think of how I can replicate this in my own shows.
Yeah, it's very cool. There's obviously not enough time to go into your full history and how you got to where you were, but I don't know. I'm just excited for the stuff you're doing. And so, but maybe let's just talk a little bit more about Transistor. I mean, if you could just give because a lot of people listening to this show might not know your story. So if you could just give like a quick overview of like what you're working on now and how the kind of success that you're seeing and how that came about.
Sure. So 2017, I was super depressed, and I was talking to my friend John Buda, who I'd met earlier in 2014. We'd built a few things together, and we're just sharing our lives. I'm looking for a new project. I was starting to come out of my depression, and I was feeling like I can tackle something new, but I'd been learning all this stuff about the market. And John had built the original version of Simplecast. And so he's like, hey, I'm building a new podcasting platform, but just for my employer. And I said, maybe this is something we could work on together. And I thought about it, and I was like thinking about the market and thinking about how it had changed. Like I was noticing, like every week in the New York Times, there's a new piece on podcasting. And then we had Serial happen and Gimlet happen and Startup Podcast happen. And then Basecamp restarts their show and invests, I'm guessing, at least 250 grand a year on hiring a couple people to run the show full time. CodePen has a show. Everybody has a show. And then I thought, how many people do I know that could like transfer their podcast to a platform if I was working on it? And my list was like 20 people. And so I pitched John on this idea of us doing it. And he'd been burnt before, so it took him a while to respond to me. Yeah. In like the fantasy retelling of this, he like begs me to join him, but really I was like, John, we got to do this.
That's good.
And then, 2018, early 2018, we signed the documents in January 2018 and launched it mostly to my network initially.
What documents did you sign?
He'd already incorporated it with Stripe. And so we signed like post-incorporation documents, which I said I didn't want to do it unless I had 50% ownership. So we agreed to that. And so we both have 50-50. So it was like assigning shares and things like that.
So it wasn't like you made some sort of agreement. It's just the business documents. Got it.
Yeah. Business documents. Yeah. And we also had a questionnaire that we asked, I think I found it somewhere, like questions to ask a potential co-founder.
Nice.
And it had helped that we had a friendship. It had helped that we had shared, some personal things with each other. It had helped that we'd built a few things together in the past. And I knew, or at least I had a very good sense that us together was like peanut butter and jelly. That us together was like Voltron. Like it's like he is such a good product person. He is such a good developer, full stack. He's the mythical full stack. And I am just pumped up, ready to go. Like just open the gate and I'll run. And once I convinced him to do that, then I was ready to run. And
you had I just want to sorry for interrupting your own story, but you had, I listened to one of your shows because you did a podcast about building the podcast business, which is great. In one of your shows, and you were already showing a certain level of traction and a certain level of success, but you were stressed and depressed and like, I don't think this isn't what I'm expecting. And I'm trying to understand, how did you get to that place?
So like we launched and I was like excited. And then, the hardest part about bootstrapping is that you either go broke or you get broken. The stress of being in the almost but not yet, of like, we're almost there. Like we've built this thing, we have paying customers. And I remember this one point, we're about to launch officially, August 2nd, 2018. We have $750 in MRR. And I'm like, okay, we'll probably double that when we launch. And then thinking, how long is this going to take? Like $1,500 a month in MRR, that's not going to help.
The SaaS ramp of death.
Yes. And although, oh man, you got to have me back to talk about SaaS ramp of death. Because the problem with the SaaS ramp of death is that in that talk, Gail Goodman, who's quite brilliant, but she was just in a different time and place, and it's a public company. Our SaaS ramp is way faster than that. I almost feel like it's like the bootstrapped elastic of death. Like you can only get stretched so far before the elastic breaks, and you're just trying to figure out how long can you hold on and have the elastic not break before you get some some margin and some comfort back in your life. And so it's just like, you're just holding on, just like, oh, I hope this doesn't break. And that's the part I was at. I was like, financially, all my revenue was coming from MegaMaker and marketing for developers. And I'm just like, how long can I hold on? And John had the reverse problem. He's going to work every day and coming back tired and trying to code on this on the evenings and weekends. And it's mentally taxing for him. You're either broke or you're broken. Those are the two risks.
Yeah, so true.
And so that's when, if you listen to the podcast, I start flailing. I'm like looking at doing a crowdfunding campaign through Republic. I'm like talking to Ernest. I'm talking to Tiny Seed. I'm just looking for some sort of pressure relief valve for this thing. And in retrospect, I'm so glad we didn't do any of those things. But in the midst of it, when you're in the midst of it and you can't see where does this end up? What helped is I did have all these contacts that I got on the phone with Josh Pigford at Barometrics, and he looked at my numbers and he said, listen, I look at numbers all day. Your numbers look very good. And your numbers right now are low, but your trajectory is very good. And so, if you can hold on, it's probably worth holding on. And Jason Cohen at WP Engine said, right now you're whatever we're 6 months in or whatever, or a year in, or I don't know what it was. But, and he said, by 2 years, if you're not at, 10K MRR per founder, I would look at maybe stopping it. But right now, he said, your trajectory looks good. And so that was helpful in getting a reality check and saying, okay, it's worth continuing. And then, our trajectory from there is just like, it just kept growing and growing. And then I think it's like by month 12, we had kind of exhausted my audience. We had kind of exhausted the launch spike that you get. And then everything was kind of going down. And then August, we found some channels that really started working for us. And then since then, it's been, really steady growth. And
that's awesome.
Again, the momentum was in the market, and the key was figuring out how are we going to ride this wave and make it sustainable. And there's certainly a lot of things we did all along that helped. That the gradually and then suddenly, it's kind of like all building up all that potential energy, and then it explodes. And if you look at our numbers, like the number of trials is like launch, and then trials go down, and then traction. It's just like it goes up, and then it just keeps going up.
Are you talking revenue now? Are you doing public figures, or have you gone past that point?
We're not doing public figures anymore, but I can say we are. I won't say when, and I won't say by how much, but we're a 7-figure a year business now.
It's fantastic. Just you were talking about Jason Cohen there. Just want to bust another myth here, because I think this is about myth busting. That's what this whole show is about. So one of the things that everyone talks about is customer development, and how important customer development is, and that kind of thing. Well, when Jason Cohen, who we've interviewed and I've spoken to a couple of times, when he first started coming up with the idea for WP, he interviewed me, a customer interview, and he was like, "Okay, I've got this idea. It's WordPress. I could do hosting." And I basically said to him, that is the worst fucking idea I've ever heard in my life. That you're never going to make any money with that. And that is exactly that's the problem with all of this advice, all of these different ideas and strategies. He did exactly what I would have done. I don't care what that person says. I think it's a good idea. I'm just going to do it anyway. You know what I mean? And he nailed it.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, you can meet with someone and they can say that wave looks bad. I wouldn't ride that wave.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know. I think that's a good one.
Exactly.
And, this is where skill and learning to read the waves and all that other stuff comes in, and hopefully getting some good early signs. Like he might have talked to you, and then the next 5 people he talked to all wrote him a check.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, but I don't know how to end this show. I mean, I don't know where it started, and I don't know how to end it.
It's great. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad we could chat. I'm happy to do it anytime, especially if we can do it like this. Just like ping me in Slack
Just
and
impromptu.
Yeah, hey, let's chat. And like I said, I'm a big fan of the show. I've listened to a lot of your interviews, and they've been certainly helpful for me. And you've been doing this a long time.
We have.
This is like one of the original Bootstrap shows.
Oh, we have been on a tiny little wave. We've been surfing on a tiny little wave with our 2,000 people for 10 years.
That's good for bootstrapping.
Those poor people are like so sick of carrying this show, but
I mean, that's example. Like in the bootstrap community, the potential audience size really is limited. Like I was trying to think about like someone who's truly just like a bootstrap thought leader. What's the size of their audience? It's like, okay, Jason Fried, but does he really count? It's like, Rob Walling doesn't have a ton of followers, like in the big scheme of things. It's like,
if you compare him to what's his name, Gary
V.
Yeah, Gary V. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's like, and Build Your SaaS, our show, which is, I think it's a great show, and we get lots of good feedback from. I think we have like 1,700 regular subscribers or something like that.
Okay,
it's just some waves are small but potent.
Well, that's right. Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of influencers who listen to our show, so that does make a difference. Like even Rob Walling, for example, is one person who listens to our show.
And yeah, exactly. I think that's the beauty of podcasting is that. I mean, I would do this interview right here with you, even if nobody was listening. I think the conversation alone is worth it. And then the added benefit is that right now there's people out there who, are with us or against us, even better, and are really engaging with what we're saying. That's amazing to me. That's the beauty of that's why I love podcasting in some ways. Is like I'm a kid from Stony Plain, Alberta. I started this little podcast called Product People in 2012 and met like most of my online friends through that show.
It is the best way of networking. It really is. I definitely agree with that. Yeah, it's such a great way to network. Well, Justin, thank you so much for coming on the show in this impromptu way, and it's been awesome to talk to you. Thank you. I guess Jason Roberts isn't here, so I will say that's a wrap.
Thanks for having me. And we're back. Hope folks enjoyed that. Definitely go check out the Tech Zing podcast and maybe let Justin know on Twitter or on his website that you listened. It's a great show. Highly recommended if you're looking for other shows to add to your queue. John Buda. Guess what happened to Patreon? They're $1 billion company now, apparently.
What does that even mean? They're worth $1 billion somewhere on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Right?
How much of this world is just an invented reality?
I don't know. Probably a lot of it.
Yeah, most of human existence is just like we've made all of this up.
I mean, it might even be a simulation for all we know.
Yeah.
So
I mean, exactly. There's so many possibilities. But if this were a simulation, I was trying to figure out ways to break the simulation. Like,
yeah, I don't know. Wasn't Patreon almost bankrupt not too long ago?
Yeah. I think
so. Like, what? I'm just confused about how all this works.
Yeah, but we still have some fine folks who support us on Patreon, and why don't you read out those names?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, thanks to everyone as always for supporting us. We have a new supporter, Helmut Earl. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but
Helmut Earl.
IRLE.
Yeah, I think it's Helmut Earl.
Okay. All right.
Helmet, if you're out there, let us know.
Yeah, let us know. We have Colt Borg, Mark Binder, Anton Zorin, Bill Kondo, Sophia Quintero, Chris Willow, Mason Hensley, Borja Soler, Ward Sandler, Travis Fisher, Matt Buckley, Russell Brown, Evandro Sassi, Noah Prail, Robert Simplicio, Colin Gray, Josh Smith, Brian Ray, Shane Smith, Austin Lovelace, Michael Sitver, Paul Jarvis, and Jack Ellis, my brother Dan Buda, Darby Frey, Samori Augusto, Dave Young, Brad from Canada, Mike Walker, Adam Devander, Dave Junta.
The original, from the beginning, the thing that sustains us and this show from 2018 to 2020 and beyond, Dave Junta.
That's great.
Thanks, Dave. Without you, we wouldn't do the show. Once Dave cancels his Patreon, we're going to be like, show's over.
It's canceled. Yeah. No pressure, Dave. Finally, Kyle Fox from GetRewardful.com.
Thanks, everyone. We will see you next time we record.